Well, good morning, everybody. As we start off this Friday forecast video, you're going to watch an animation here of some of the live lightning strikes early this morning going through southern Wisconsin. This was the tail end of a pretty nasty setup for severe thunderstorms yesterday that went through parts of southern Minnesota, out of Nebraska, and through Iowa. We'll take a closer look at that in a second. Now, if you really just want to hone in on the long-range forecast, just fast forward till I get to about right here in these slides. And we're going to cover the new outlook for most of May. We're going to look at some of the trends in the models. We're also going to be talking about the historical analogs again, and I'm going to give you the new CPC forecast plus the IRI multi-model probability forecast. We're going to be looking for consistency in those things. That's what we're doing. We're looking for trends and consistency. But in between, we of course have major flood threat that's through parts of the southern United States, getting into parts of the Midwest, parts of the Central Plains, and we have more severe weather to deal with. So speaking of that severe weather, I just want to show you yesterday the hail that went across parts of Iowa. We had multiple streaks in through here of very powerful supercell thunderstorms that produced very large hail. And the damage swaths coming out of parts of Nebraska into Iowa, just some of the pictures I saw this morning on Twitter were incredible. Some of this was up to softball size hail when we look at the hail reports. To see it on satellite was just impressive. This is going back to yesterday. You can see the nose of the instability getting in through here in this cumulus cloud field. That's just part of the recipe. There's so much more to this. But there's a boundary that was lingering right in through here that was pushing into that very moist and unstable air that was capped farther to the south. But right in through here, we had enough push in the lower atmosphere to break through that cap. And the storms began to explode. They were, right here to the, to the west of Omaha, and they just continued to barrel right through this area. And what we had was two different supercells right here and here. And what's interesting about this is that the upper level wind shear must have been in this direction, as we can see. So this supercell had rain from this one going into it. And there's a shadowing effect. One of my former colleague and good friend, Jeff Frame, he studied these anvil shadows and what they do. Plus, whenever you see one supercell rain into the other like this, they tend to really affect the pairing of the storm systems and how they continue to evolve. So as we got later into the evening, as the sun was beginning to set here, we watched these go across parts of Iowa. And on radar, they look like this. There they are. And what you notice is that the stronger storm becomes the one on the south, and they eventually, by the time I got all the way over the Quad Cities, had fizzled out. Let's watch this again, but slow it down just a hair so you can watch these two storms. Now, this is not to take away from the squall line that was in southern Minnesota or the severe weather that was reported there as well, but I'm keeping an eye on these storms right in through here. So the one to the south raining into the one in the north, and what ends up happening at some point is that the southern storm system becomes the larger and likely produces the greater effect, but it goes right there. And do you remember yesterday we were watching the high-resolution refresh model, the HER, and it picked up on this very, very well. And there was this concern that either along or south or north of I-80, somewhere along the I-80 corridor, we would be seeing a storm system like this. And to say it was impressive meteorologically is one thing, but just to understand the sheer damage from this is another. So there's your two storms right there, and then you had the ones that ran across the northern part of Iowa as well. Total number of severe weather reports, let's blow this up. We're currently looking at 16 reports of tornadoes, very large hail as you can see here, and some wind reports too. And I imagine these reports are going to continue to grow today as we see the results of this as the sun's now up, and we're getting a good look at the damage across parts of Iowa, southern Minnesota, and southern Wisconsin. There was some snow on the backside of this, and this map is only valid through midnight last night, so we're not getting what has been falling this morning in this area, but just wanted to show you that the other part of this system was to drop snow all along the spine of the Rockies here. And if we just have a look at total precipitation through 6 a.m., early this morning, some of this was falling as snow as well. But I want you to kind of get a good glimpse of how much rain we were able to get out of this, knowing that as we go forward, we're going to be watching this boundary, the one that produced those storms, linger in this area, stretching from parts of the Red River Valley of the South up through my home state of Illinois into parts of Michigan, And what this is all being fed on is just kind of this larger area of high pressure. There's kind of two pieces to it, but it doesn't matter. The flow coming around the south side of this is what's opening it up. There's dry air coming out of Texas, and it's all meeting in through here as this front slides underneath all of it. So the net effect of all of this is that we're going to watch a multi-day heavy rainfall event through this part of the country with more severe weather, while the bigger, broader trough on the backside finally finishes this out Sunday into Monday. And I'll show you the effect of that in just a few moments. So this morning, we do have the flood watches that have been posted here. We're still dealing with the flooding along the Mississippi River to the south. We've got red flag warnings in New Mexico and Texas. Farther to the north, this is winter storm warning, winter weather advisory. And here's our severe thunderstorm watches and warnings early this morning coming through parts of southern Wisconsin, which you just saw. So later today, the risk is going to be along that stalled out boundary from Texas all the way through Illinois and Indiana, southern Wisconsin for severe storms. Tomorrow, you're going to see this kind of just retreat back here as the next low begins to emerge out of New Mexico. And then as we get into the day, here it is. Let's go to day 3. I accidentally closed it there. Day 3 looks like this coming out of Arkansas and Missouri. And that's going to be where we watch for our heaviest rainfall. Now, in terms of winds, just to kind of get an idea on the wind gusts, because it has been an extremely windy spring as we've talked about, just want to show you the wind gusts expected here through the weekend. And we are going to be anticipating 40 to 50 mile an hour winds in this area. But if we flip this over to a precipitation type and intensity forecast, this is from the high resolution NAM this morning. We're going to watch, here it is, this is queued up to about right now, and we're going to move through this afternoon and this evening. There's your little saddle point and the pressure trough that is going to give rise to the to the rising motion in the atmosphere here. And we watch snow coming through parts of Colorado and the low spinning itself up. Now look, this is Saturday morning. Just rounds of storms, rounds of heavy rain coming through this area. And this is before the low even starts to emerge. So watch when the low comes out here. This is 3 p.m. on Saturday, getting into the overnight hours on Saturday night, and it's Sunday. There's the low on Sunday. Coming out, squall line to its south, presses into eastern Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, and the high-res NAM runs out 60 hours, so we kind of get it to this point. Now, bigger picture, because of the system on the stalled-out boundary, we are looking at, over the next week, some very heavy rainfall. And this isn't the only precipitation maker. The one I just showed you, we have more coming behind it. So the newest WPC update, again, has a swath in here of several inches of rain. In fact, I'm just going to zoom my own map into the south central United States just to get a good look at it. And it's possible that coming out of parts of Texas into Oklahoma, clipping Arkansas, Kansas, and Missouri, that there's a swath that could be looking at 5, 6, 7 inches of total rainfall. I wanted to kind of verify this with the probabilities. So if we just start off at the probability of getting 2 inches of total accumulated precipitation in the next 10 days, we have a better than 90% chance here. This is 4. New model run just came in. Let's go back. Gosh, I have terrible timing with that. But there's the probability of 4 inches. So into Oklahoma through Missouri, we're looking at a 60 to 80% chance of at least 4 inches. If we go up to 8, we don't see anything on 8, which is good. On the drier side of this, take note, parts of the northern plains are drier. Southwest is drier. That's quite common, though, for this time of year. And where that high pressure cell is sitting, over Florida, southern Georgia, parts of Alabama, maybe in a little bit of South Carolina, it is drier as well. Okay. From here, let's go talk about a comment that I saw the other day. I was asked, Eric, I know you're going to give us a long-range forecast, but man, the models blew this spring. They did a terrible job with this spring. And I just don't agree. That's okay. We can all have different thoughts on this. But take a look. This is what was forecast by the European model back on February 1st for March, April, May. So we're about half of the way through this. This is just to be very clear. We never look at these maps for magnitudes. Don't look at it for magnitude. I'm talking about these seasonal maps. Only look at it for pattern. So what was the pattern? Drier risk in through here, wetter risk in through there, wetter here, drier along the Gulf Coast. So that is what I see when I look at this. So if we go back to the start of March and get halfway through April, this is what's happened. So you can see the pattern, right? There was the drier, there's the wetter, there's been times drier, and you know that it's coming up dry down here. This has been a miss, okay? But they got this. Now I'm talking, look at this part of New York, Pennsylvania down to Virginia. That has been drier, and it was forecast wetter, right? So I look at these, and I'll be honest with you, when I look at them, I'll just blur my eyes and say, just tell me what the pattern is in the model, and I'm going to go search to see if it matches up meteorologically, because it wasn't just the European model that was predicting this. I also pulled up the archive forecast released in February for March, April, May, and again, this was what they were predicting. And we have seen this, right? March was mild, but April's brought in colder air. We've had our warmest conditions here. And this is held pretty true. These are always about patterns, not about magnitude. So just something to be thinking about, because in a few moments, we're going to get into the long range again. Okay, model information. We've recently seen the GFS really drop off in its performance. There's a pretty big skill gap right now between the GFS and the European. But what's interesting is both models seem to be showing the same features when we look across the United States. So maybe there's something across the Northern Hemisphere they're not picking up on together, but currently in the US, they're pretty well timed. So we've seen through this weekend. So here it is. There's the low finally coming out. There it is on Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon and evening, going out through parts of the Midwest. The GFS is a bit faster than the European. That's quite common, although it wasn't happening this winter. And then we see that low move through the Great Lakes, spreading some snow into parts of Ontario, and the frontal boundary gets dragged over the Appalachian Mountains here. We just watch a little clipper follow it into southern Canada, right there, okay? So this is Tuesday next week. After that, we have nothing that shuts down the Gulf yet. So by next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we have this opening up of moisture back into this area. It's in both models, just a large area of late next week thunderstorm activity and heavier rains. And this comes through and pushes right in the same direction, right through Illinois, into the eastern Corn Belt, into the Northeast. And the models both have it. So I'm out here 216 hours, and I see the same kind of look in this system in that area. And then we wonder if after this, the pattern might calm down a bit. But before we get there, can I show you 4 different models on total precipitation? So here is the forecast for the next 10 days. This is through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week. Going out to next weekend, Friday, Saturday. See, we're adding here Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then let's go out to Sunday and all the way out to April 27th. That's total precip from the Euro. Here's total precipitation over the next 10 days from the AI model. And here it is from the GFS. And here it is from the NBM. I mean, we're looking at the potential for some extremely wet weather here. And by the way, the AI model just keeps dumping it in there through day 15. So we got to be aware of what this pattern is going to do. And I'm watching very carefully late into the week 2 time period for something to be down here in the southern plains. More on that in just a few moments. Okay, there is some snow with this as well. So we can see the snow continuing through this weekend, through parts of Colorado into New Mexico at high elevation, some out here in the plains. Then as the low leaves on Sunday, by Monday, Tuesday, watch northern Wisconsin, the UP, Michigan, Lake Superior into Ontario. This is early next week. But after that, I'm not seeing a whole lot of additional snow getting added into the system. So the pattern still has, by Friday, April 25th, this is next Friday, more western U.S. troughs. So see that? And because of this, going into week 2, just anytime we get the flow to do that with some sort of ridging here, we're going to be wet in the midsection of the country in the models. Does it change out there by the time we start May? I still see lower heights here, and there's some sort of ridging across the U.S. I think this is more a temperature signal than a precipitation signal, but it's something to be on the lookout for. And I'm keeping a close eye on, again, this region, in fact, the whole of the plains, because starting on Monday the 28th, you're looking at a pressure, you're looking at a European ensemble pressure anomaly map. So not anomaly, pressure, just average map. So I'm looking for where there's low pressure versus high. And there it is, and there's higher over here. So this is the 28th, 29th, 30th. I see a lot of storm systems rolling north, but May 1st, May 2nd, I see pressure dropping in this area again. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because our week 2 models, they all kind of look something like this. I'll just pull up the Euro for completeness. Wet corridor here, and then something trying to emerge pretty far to the south with the pressure dropping there once we really get to about May 1st. And the more rain we get into the southern plains, the more we beat back this southern plains drought through spring. Now, if you remember the narrative, it was the dryness that was here migrating going into summer, right? And we're going to come back to that narrative here in just a few moments, but I wanted you to see that through week 2. All right, behind this system that just went through, let's talk temperatures. We have a cold front, and that cold front's dropping temperatures off 10 to 20 degrees below where it was yesterday at this time. But our frost threat over the next 7 days, look how far to the north this line has made it now. Okay, Thinking that through, here are our high temperatures. Oh, I don't want to show you that one. That's my old animation. Let's get back to the new stuff, which is here. Yeah, much crisper images. This is today's high temperatures compared to average, so there is your snow threat. Don't forget that last week we were 90 degrees here. Crazy to think about this shift in temperature. So Friday's highs, Saturday, Sunday. Now remember, this is when the low is curling up. So if there's our warm sector, our severe weather threat is here on Sunday. This goes into Monday. Cooler across the north interior of the U.S., a warm up in California, Central Valley, warm east. Tuesday, cool down again out of Montana to North Dakota, coming out of the Canadian Prairie. Do you remember what's going on there? That's when that little clipper was sneaking across this area. Then we get into next Thursday, and that's what our temperatures look like across the United States. So thinking about that, let's go shrink that up so you can see it again. Here's the matrix, right? So European, GFS, AI. And I don't see a whole lot of cold coming in with this across much of the country. So let's do like we did yesterday and look at the probability of dropping below 32. This is Saturday morning. So again, you're looking, you can think of this as a frost line. Saturday morning, Sunday morning, Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, this is the 24th, Friday morning, getting into next weekend. That's Sunday morning next weekend. I mean, look at that retreat. I'll just keep kind of playing through this. Probability of going below freezing is not very high. Now, there is some concern way, way out there, and I'll show you where it is, that we could drop some early cool May weather here. That's not a frost forecast. It's just something showing up in the models we need to discuss, okay? But from there, I do want to show you, now that you've seen kind of the temperature pattern, what this outlook from April 22nd to May 22nd looks like. Now, I'm starting on April 22nd because we're trying to get past this big weekend system. And look, it's got a wetter corridor here. It's got this thing in Texas, drier west, possibly a little drier in here, which means we could be finding some early May planting windows back into this area. So keep that in mind. And this is the European forecast for that time frame. This is the GFS. So for these two models having some separation on their skill score, I mean, that pattern isn't that different. Now, it's different here, but man, there's a lot to this that's pretty similar. By the way, the CFSV2 looks something like this. Now, this is not over the same time period. This is broken down into weeks. So May 2nd to May 8th, and then we have May 9th through May 15th. Again, we are watching something in the southern plains during that time frame. It's going to be very climatologically consistent with severe weather here. And now, again, I'm going to come back to this comment like, hey, why are we so wet in the central plains? I thought we were looking for drought. We've been talking about a summertime thing. And even in some of our worst drought years, especially for the southern plains, like 11 and 12, still had storms here. It still stormed. A lot of hailers, but that's what happened. So just something to kind of make a point of clarification. I did mention that maybe in early May, there's this cool risk, eastern Great Lakes. By the way, for lower Michigan, Ontario, part of New York, this would be very climatologically consistent for a last frost anyway. I want to be careful. I'm not drawing a frost line. That's not what this is. But I will be monitoring this particular week carefully to see if the cold air is going to sag far enough south to be an issue. But clearly after that, May 9th through 15th, it's back blown open warm. And I want you to know, I've been watching this model every day. This has been the coldest forecast it's made for that time. It's been waffling around quite a bit on this. Okay, now we get a bit longer range. Sea surface temperatures. Now, let's give you the narrative for what I'm watching. Fading La Nina, okay? This La Nina that's fading here is connected back up with this negative phase of the Pacific meridional mode. That's what we're watching through here. The cold water is its negative phase. If it was warm water, we'd talk about positive. There's a tongue of warm water that's stretching in through here, so it's kind of along this area. And we've seen the Gulf of Alaska ocean temperatures stay close to average, but seeing cooler water kind of following back all the way to the coast of China and Japan is what's of concern. We do not have a strong Indian Ocean dipole signal, and in the Atlantic, this push of cooler water in through here is, well, something we have to look at the analogs for. It's a hint of the trade wind behavior, while there's much warmer water farther to the north. Okay, we've warmed up here, and you've seen the other areas we've been labeling. Now, why am I doing this? Okay, I'm doing this because we've, through the aid of Colorado State University, picked out some analog years. And here they are again. We did this, what was that, last week or 2 weeks ago? 96, 99, 06, 08, 11, 17. And I put in 12. Colorado State did not, but I put it in there for a reason. I'll show you why. When we look at the composite April ocean temperatures, we were warm in here. We were cool in the Gulf of Alaska, negative PMM, and you can see the cooler water stretching there. We were colder here, no strong signal of the Indian Ocean dipole. And while you don't see the cooler tongue, it was not warm. That's important to take note of here. Now, this part of the Atlantic, when you look at over all these time periods, was actually not warm like it is currently. And that will have an influence. That's why it's going to give 2025 its own flavor. But there's a whole lot of things about those analog years stitched together that look like right now, especially in the Pacific, which is our upwind pattern for the United States. So what happened by June, July, and August? The PDO crashed. This became very, very warm. The momentum in the atmosphere going from west to east just took a nosedive. The PMM went cold. La Nina's fade was still there. No strong Indian Ocean dipole signal. We were warming up here, and a lot of the Atlantic was warming coming off of Africa. And it was quite warm actually in the North Pacific as well. North Atlantic as well. But there was cold water here. So that pattern, in particular, this reverse C shape, is what I'm watching for most carefully. Because what it did to the upper atmosphere in June through August was produce high pressure here. That's the Pacific high. The Bermuda high drifted off toward Nova Scotia, even up toward Greenland. And the jet stream went over the top of this, dipped down there, ran up over the top of this, dipped down here, and ran up over the top of that. And the net effect was to produce high pressure that sat here, here, and here when you look at these years in composite. And that's that triple ridge pattern. Now, compared to average, over the last 50 years, this high pressure cell has been here more often. And the Bermuda high typically lives in Bermuda. So you see how the whole pattern, when you look at these analog years, was shifted. So what we have to do is say, well, what did it do? What it did is the upper level high sat there. And if the upper level high is here, the surface high pressure often forms and repeats there. So you get flow around it that does something like this. And that promotes thunderstorms that come through the Canadian prairie and lines that kind of go through the Great Lakes and then explode over into the East Coast. Those are your ridge riders. You then tend to open up the Gulf, right, to moisture, so you tended to see a lot of thunderstorms here, and we have an active southwest monsoon. It even later, now this is only July to August, but brings in more hurricane activity into this area. That's what that high pressure cell can do. So that is the diagnosis. Now, to be very clear, we are looking at magnitudes here, composite magnitudes over 3 months, and it was 2 to 3 inches drier than average, which means it wasn't bone dry, it rained. Now, some of you are going, well, wait a minute, this looks so bad because you included 2012. All right, I'll take it out. That's what it looks like without 2012. With and without. And you still see the same pattern. So we have to understand that 1 year, when we use this many analogs, isn't completely destroying the composite dialogue. We then have to say, well, what happened after that? August to October, because you continue to see this wetter conditions here, here, and here, while we stayed drier in much of the Midwest. Drier, no early start to any sort of moisture out west. Bigger storms in this area. So what was going on there? Well, the high pressure cell moved. So the ridge runners were doing this and coming back into the plains. But again, you're like, well, 2012 had Sandy. That's what's biasing this. I'm watching you on the East Coast, Eric. That was what happened there. Nope, I'll take 2012 out. Still wet there. In fact, when you take 2012 out, look at this. Watch the central United States. August to October, it got drier. These are the same color bars down here at the bottom, just to be clear. So that's the analog support for what we think could happen. Now what we need to do is we need to look at the temperatures and the analogs, and then we'll move it on to the new model runs. So June to August, when we look at the temperatures, it was hottest compared to average from Texas up through the Rockies. And all of these years combined, even though we were dry, we cannot say that the temperatures drove a lot of yield loss. And I'm sorry, I kind of stuttered over my words there, but I was thinking about these years. When I look at all of these years, I'm going to specifically talk about Corn Belt. Just why not? Because we're there. I was just drawing around it. All of these years, except 11 and 12, had trend or above yield for the Corn Belt. Now, that doesn't mean there weren't pockets. I mean, I got somebody there going, wait a minute, 2017, I got hammered. I'm talking about the whole Corn Belt. Other than 11 and 12, these years were all trend, yield, or above. So these are the two that are the riskiest years. So with all that being said, what I want to do now is this. Let's go to the new CPC weather website. They've just updated this, and I want to show you their seasonal drought outlook. Now, where have they put their greatest risk? They have reduced it here from previous forecasts, but they are watching this whole area for the continuation of drought, and that's a big section of the Western Corn Belt, big section of the plains. Persistent drought here. And the new monitor looks something like this. It has dropped a little bit in area of drought because of some of the recent rain, but that's where we have drought in those places. So using the CPC, I'm now going to show you their May, June, July forecast for precipitation. Remember, look for pattern, not magnitude. They're looking for drier conditions May, June, July to move north, not into Texas, but to move north. Wetter conditions east. This is now getting into, there we go, June, July, August. The models put the epicenter of driest conditions over where we just watched the severe weather come out yesterday. Wetter along the coast. Look at the southwest monsoon emerging. We then go into July, August, September. Beginning of the hurricane season, is that what they're picking up on here? Or is it more about the flow coming around the high, giving us the ridge-riding storm events that run into the convergent zone along the Gulf and along the East Coast, making more storms, and then the southwest monsoons going. And then this would be the hurricane season, August, September, October, wetter, still drier, end of the monsoon. Temperature-wise, and this is the important thing, May, June, July, hottest in the Great Basin. June, July, August, hottest in the Great Basin, but risking above average temperatures here. July, August, September, hottest from Texas to the Great Basin, even north up toward the Snake River Valley. And then finally, we've got August, September, October. All right, let's go look at one other thing. I'm going to take you down to the IRI multi-model probability forecast, February, March, April. Now, this was a forecast, February, March, April, issued in January, because we're going, wait a minute, how did we screw, the models? No, they didn't. They picked up on this risk and the dryness here, which we definitely saw in February, March, with these systems racing out, getting to this area. We were wetter here as well. So when I look at this, I cannot say that the model didn't get this. But now we go out and we add the newest forecast from April and say, what does it have for May, June, July? That's the precipitation it's forecasting for May, June, July. Here's June, July, August. Patchy dryness here, dry over Idaho and Montana. Then we get into July, August, September, the hardest summer. And it's got Western Corn Belt drought issues, possibly some mid-south, southeast risk, and also here. And then finally, during that same time, July, August, September, can we go over to Europe? It's trying in eastern Ukraine, western Russia to go dry as well. Same thing for Portugal and Spain. What about just the whole globe? Summer. Active Indian monsoon. Wet Manchurian Plain, North China Plain. Very wet through Indonesia. Winter time for Australia. Okay, wet east. We do a lot of ag through this area. But that's what we've got from these models. And we take them at face value because they're just models. But I showed you the analogs to try to make a case for why the models are doing what they're doing. It's part of it. But with that, and that's just something to think about all weekend long, we'll continue to let these ideas evolve. And I want to give you one last thing to think about, okay? I want to be extremely clear on this so that I'm not misunderstood. If you look statistically at the risk of building in drought, and specifically into the Western Corn Belt, because that's where I've been giving a lot of talks, it's currently at 60%. And you say, all right, well, what does that mean? Well, normally, going into any growing season, if you just look over the last 45 years and say, well, what's the risk of building drought? It's around 30%. So it's double the risk. But don't forget this. Please, I hope all of you hung on to the end of this video. That makes it a 40% chance that we're wrong. And you say, well, Eric, what do I do with all that? I'm going to tell you, keep watching. But the most important forecast that I will give you will start in late May and go through late June. That is when we will know if the risk is here. And I'm going to tell you, the top thing I'm going to be watching is to see if these ocean temperatures get cool and these ocean temperatures get cool. If they do, the West Coast sees a less than crazy hot summer, and the Midwest has this risk. That is the pre-season indicator, the biggest one on the risk of summer heat and drought in the midsection of the country. All right. Well, that's enough to think about all weekend long. Please have a safe Easter weekend. I'll talk to you on Monday. Thanks.